Hello, welcome to the second in a series of videos on essentials of astrology research. And in this video, we are going to address a big issue in research, which is to see if your findings are just random fluctuations in nature, just the way the planets move, or are they real differences from other people? So, for example, let's say you do research on a group of people. Well, I'm researching astrologers right now. So, suppose we look at the birth charts of astrologers and we see that most of them have Sun in the first house, first or second house. And we're trying to interpret that. Well, you know what? If the births are mostly not through cesarean or other surgical intervention or induced labor, if it's just a full-term normal pregnancy, there's a lot of research indicating that there's a natural cycle in nature to be born a little bit before sunrise. And that a little bit before sunrise, the sun would be in the first and second house. So maybe you're just looking at babies who were born full term and not through some kind of surgery or being induced. On the other hand, if you're seeing peaks of babies born in during the daytime, sun is above the horizon, and very few at night, and you're thinking, wow, astrologers are day people. Maybe you're just looking at babies that are born in urban areas and hospitals, or that like to schedule births during the day when the doctors or nurses are usually working and easier to schedule things, and they're inducing the births. Well, you get my point. There's natural cycles. The Mercury turns retrograde for 3 weeks, about 3 times a year, and Uranus is retrograde about 1/3 of the time, and we don't know if Mercury and Uranus tend to be conjunct very often, or tend to be opposition, or tend not to be. And even if you're trained in details of astronomy, it's difficult to know without just observing. So the question is this. This drop at 60 degrees and 120 degrees, that astrologers are not born with Mercury sextile Uranus or Mercury trine Uranus. They also tend not to be born when Mercury's conjunct Uranus or opposition Uranus. Those are also low. The lowest are the sextiles and trines. Is that just a random fluctuation? Maybe it's just the way the planets move. So we need to have some way to compare to something else to find out. And when we're looking at these graphs in the Sirius software, there's a very quick way to get a good idea of whether this is just the way Mercury and Uranus move. And what it is that we can select the feature to look at the distribution of Mercury and Uranus. How cool is that? You just click this option that says, show me how Mercury and Uranus are distributed in the sky during the period of time that the astrologers were born. So what this feature does is it takes the oldest astrologer and the youngest astrologer and takes the time range in which the astrologers are born and looks to see how Mercury and Uranus are distributed every single day. So if it's over 30 years or 50 years, the software is going to look at every single day, once a day, over all that 30 or 50 years or whatever it is, and see what the distribution is and compare the astrologers to the way Mercury and Uranus move. So that will tell us. It's one way to get an idea. And in the exploratory research, it's a very handy, quick way to get a sense of whether you're actually looking at the way Mercury and Uranus are distributed for astrologers, or is it just the way Mercury and Uranus are distributed in the sky? And here are the results. Let me show you before we go into this slide how we selected, and I'll make it clearer what it is we're looking at here. So let me go back here, and what we're going to do, let me take you back all the way back to the beginning, is what we've done is we've selected research, we selected exploratory research, this one here, and then we selected Mercury and Uranus, and we selected astrologers at the top. This is what we did in the first video in this series, and then we clicked on calculate, and we got the results. Now we're going to do one more thing. We've got this option here for daily transits distribution. If I select yes, it will show me how Mercury and Uranus are distributed in the sky. Let me show it to you. And it's going to show me the distribution for astrologers and the distribution in the sky. Remember, distribution means what's happening across a range of values, how the values are distributed. So it's telling me at the top that red is the actual scores, blue is the transit distribution. So when I look at 0, means 0 to 1 degrees, and I look at the blue, it's slightly above 5. If I go over here to 9, that means 9 to 10 degrees. Blue means in the sky, Mercury and Uranus tend to occur at 9 to 10 degrees, the same as 0 to 1, a little more than 5. In fact, if I jump over here, a little more than 5, little more than 5, little more than 5, little more than 5 down here, no matter what I look at, even towards the end, 175, 176 degrees, a little more than 5. So this is 4 graphs. The first one is 0 to 45. Second one is 45 to 90, then 90 to 135, and 135 to 180. And if you look carefully, you'll see that the blue bars are hardly changing at all. This means that the angular distance between Mercury and Uranus is random. It is very, very random, almost perfectly random. So we don't know that, and now, a priori, we just don't know that off the top of our heads because it's not true for every planetary pair, but for Mercury, Uranus, it is. So what we can do, I can return to previous screen and I can select diff, means difference, and click on calculate, and this will show the difference between the astrologers and the random distribution of transits, and anything that goes up above 0 means the astrologers have that more than the random distribution, and if it goes down, astrologers have it less. So over here in this range, if you see my cursor, notice most things are going down. Down, down, up a little, way down. Most of these are going down, and this is with near the 60 degrees. And on the third graph, it's over here, 120 degrees, and it's up a little, up, down, way down. Also tending this way down, overall it tends to be down more than up. So it's confirming that astrologers do in fact tend to have sextiles and trines. These astrologers, these 1,020 astrologers, the fact is they have Mercury sextile Uranus and Mercury trine Uranus less often than would be expected by chance. It's that simple. And let's go back to the PowerPoint. And here what I did is if I go back to Sirius, I clicked on this Save to File button. So I saved it, and then I brought it up in the Paint program so I could put these little rectangles in here and fill them in to show what's happening within a 5-degree orb. Mercury sextile Uranus is very unlikely for these astrologers. Look at it. It's down, slightly up, down, way down, down, slightly up, way down. trine, not quite as dramatic, but still within 5 degrees, very strong tendency for astrologers to not have Mercury trine Uranus, mostly down. And then the larger one shows you at 7 degrees what happens. So it's up to you as an astrologer to think, do I want to use a 5-degree orb, 7-degree orb, or a larger orb? Whatever you use, you're going to have good results showing that astrologers do not have Mercury sextile Uranus or trine Uranus. Now, could this just be a random fluctuation in the data? It could, but let's go back to the previous slide, because this line graph makes it very clear. It's really extraordinarily unlikely that astrologers have Mercury sextile Uranus or trine Uranus more than average. That would mean that this particular group of 1,000 astrologers was the opposite to other astrologers? Not likely. Not likely. So this is what the exploratory research is telling us. We can conclude with some fairly good level of confidence that astrologers do not have Mercury sextile or trine Uranus more often than other people. Maybe it's not less. Maybe this dip is just a random fluctuation of these people, but it's not a random fluctuation that reversed the natural tendency. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, we have a sampling of 1,000. That's a lot of astrologers, enough to see what's going on. And these are just happen to be the most famous astrologers who got in the database. They're not cherry-picked because I happen to choose them. They just happen to be in the database. They weren't put in there because somebody looked at the Mercury-Uranus angle. You want to use common sense in exploratory research. You're not making a decision based on facts that you can absolutely be certain of. I mean, somebody could say, well, how do you know that? Blah, blah, blah. That's not what exploratory research is about. It's about using common sense, insight into astrology, understanding how to look at graphs to come up with what is realistic and is clearer than just random people's charts that we happen to be looking at, and might tell us more about who we know and how we relate to other people than to astrologers, independent of who we attract into our lives. The bottom line is this: astrologers do not have Mercury sextile Uranus or trine Uranus more often than other people. We can say that with great confidence. Can we say it with 100% confidence? No. But that's not what astrology is about. What research is about. First thing we discussed in the first video in the series, to get greater confidence, greater understanding, so we have increased confidence that this is true. We've looked at the data. This is what the data is telling us. And based on the way the data is gathered and what it's showing, it's very clear. With very good confidence, we can say astrologers do not have those aspects in their charts more often than other people. I would not go so far as to say astrologers have it less, but I would say with great confidence they do not have it more. We do not have to just guess. You can read articles where astrologers say, that a certain group of people have this in their charts. Look at this famous person. Look at this other famous person. Or people will discuss on social media, or they meet with their friends in astrology groups. You'll see it all over Facebook and other social media, people sharing. Why not just look at the data? If you've got the right software, the data's already there, pull it up, look at it, and look at the distribution, and you will know. You will know with much greater confidence what's going on. And so this is just simply not true, that Mercury sextile or trine Uranus for astrologers. Pretty exciting stuff that we can get this information. And if you are an astrologer and you've got a good insight into how astrology works, you'll be able to pull up this kind of information, make sense of it, interpret it, and combine together actual observations within a data set with your personal experience and come up with even stronger, more confident ideas of how astrology works. Okay, so we looked at this. So to summarize, we have now finished point number 1. What is point number 1 of our 11 points we're going to make? 11 essential things to know about for research. Point number 1, do exploratory research first. How do you do exploratory research? Number 1, you can look at your client data. You can organize that data. You can take your 10 cases of clients with ADHD or some other situation, and then you can explore it. You can assign them to their own category. I didn't show you that within Sirius software, but you assign them to their own category. It's very simple. And see what their sun signs are, their moon signs, what their Mercury-Uranus angle is, their moon-Uranus angle, whatever you want to look at. I've shown you how to look at those distributions of signs and of angular distances and how to graph it and look at it at different levels of smoothing. We've looked at all this in the first video in this section. We went through all that, and you can come up with clear ideas of what's going on. Okay, so point number 1, start your research with exploratory research. Don't go in with blinders on looking for a specific thing. Number 2, 2 good exploratory research methods are studying the birth charts. Assuming your research is about birth charts, maybe you're looking at forecasts, whatever it is. Look at charts, examples, organize, come up with conclusions, see what's in common, and then look at graphs. Like the 2 examples of graphs that we looked at, the bar chart of sun signs and the line chart of angular distances. 2 examples of data visualization. By the way, a little asterisk there. For more information on how to use data visualization in astrology research, I have a video called Data Visualization in Astrology Compatibility Research, where I show how I use the data visualization when seeing what's in the charts of married couples to find out who people tend to marry. There's an exciting topic. And we can use the data visualization, and we have a database of married couples, and we look at that distribution and certain things pop out. So yes, you as an individual, you can do research without any statistics and all that stuff, and just see what's going on in the data and give us more confidence about how things actually work in astrology. So anyway, that's another video if you want to go into more detail. Point number 3, having a good way to compare with a random distribution of planets or a control group. I'll talk more about control groups later, but you want to know if what you're looking at is just what happens in the sky, or is it really different from other people. And we looked at how you can pull up the distribution of planets when you're doing this exploratory research of angular distance between planets to help with that, help a lot with that. And point number 4, use your astrological expertise and look for consistent themes. For example, if Mercury also tends to be sextile or trine other planets, or Uranus tends to be sextile or trine other planets, like suppose you're doing the ADHD research and you find that Mercury is sextile or trine other planets, or Mercury sextile or trine Uranus. Is it Mercury or is it Uranus that's doing it? Maybe it's the Uranus. Maybe Mars also tends to be sextile or trine Uranus. Maybe Saturn does something. Maybe the Sun does. If you can get a consistent theme where you're using the same kinds of aspects, the same kinds of orbs, various planets to Uranus, you get a very clear, simple set of astrological aspects, for example, that's happening. That's huge. That's huge, because if you can develop a consistent theme for what's happening, not arbitrary things, this very strongly indicates that you're onto something, that you are really making a discovery. Okay, I think that's it for so some terminology before we go on to point number 2. Next slide is point number 2. We have 11 points that we're making, 11 guidelines for doing astrology research. Before we go into guideline number 2, let me go over some terminology. The word variable. You'll hear the word variable all the time. You know what variable means? It means something that varies. That's all it means. Something that varies. Does the sun sign vary? Yes, because it could be Aries, it could be Taurus, it could be Gemini. It's not always the same thing. Anything that changes can be called a variable. What's the opposite of a variable? Is a constant. A constant means something that does not change. Realistically does not change within the context of what we're interested in. For example, let's say we are looking at the height of a person during the research study, and the research study takes a year. And if the people are all adults, their height generally doesn't change over 1 year. Maybe some people start to slouch more. Maybe they start slouching. I mean, maybe there could be some slight changes in height, but realistically, it's constant within a certain tolerance. Not likely to change more than an inch typically. And if it does change in very rare cases, we call that measurement error. But generally, it's constant. So is something fairly constant? Is it, constant within the framework we're looking at, or is it a variable? And then the term predictor variable. The astrology variables are called predictor variables. So if the sun is in Aries, that's a predictor variable. If sun is square Jupiter, that's a predictor variable. But do not let the word predictor scare you. Some people are very strongly of the belief that astrology is not mechanistic. It's more synchronistic. It's not that the planets are causing something. That's fine. That doesn't affect our terminology. We still call the astrology variables predictor variables. Also, when you get into these ideas of causes, the word cause in a lot of research is different from how people might assume the word is used. So cause in research often has nothing to do with a mechanical cause. So I'm not going to get into all that, but it's not as one-dimensional and simple as it's sometimes portrayed by astrologers, that astrology is not causal. Well, just to let you know, I use the word cause. We do use the word cause in research, and I use the word consistent with the Rubin causal model, the RCM. I won't go into all that. But anyway, don't let it bother you that we call them predictor variables. And we call the behavior or personality that we're studying the outcome variable. So ADHD, or the person's an astrologer, or something else, the person's a singer, whatever it is, that's the outcome variable. You also will hear in research, and we'll be using this terminology as well, the probability, and it's often called a p-value for short, or p is less than 0.05, means that the probability was less than 5%, which means less than 1 out of 20 people. Or p is less than 0.01 is another one that you'll hear a lot. P less than 0.05, p less than 0.01 are common cutoff points. And of course, p less than 0.01 means less than 1% probability. So I just want to mention this terminology now as a head start. Also, we're going to learn that probability is not usually the most important statistic. Here, statistic means like value, but it is one that's useful at times. But it's not the only one. There are others that can often be more important. We'll get to all that. But anyway, just laying out some some terminology, sorry. And also predictor variables are sometimes called independent variables. Outcome variables are also known as dependent variables. That's kind of an older language. People still use it, independent and dependent variables. But more common now in a lot of fields is to use terms like predictor variable and outcome variable, and those are the terms we will use. So the idea, why are we calling them predictor and outcome variables, is that if a person has ADHD, or a person is an astrologer, or a person's a good singer, that is not going to move the planets. So if you have a good voice, it's not going to make Mercury move faster or slow down. So the planetary positions are determined by the laws of motion, like Kepler's laws of motion, and for that reason, you can think of the planet positions as being more primary. So they would be called the predictor variables, and the behavior or personality outcome variables. But it's just more primary in that way, and it does not necessarily mean that there's a mechanistic cause behind it. Anyway, when we're associating variables, we often use these terms, and those terms would be the ones we would use. Again, it does not imply the exact mechanism by which astrology works. Okay, let's see. We are at 26 minutes. I like to make these videos about a half hour long. First video went over a half hour. So let's start the third video with point number 2, to limit your confidence in the conclusions from exploratory research results. Okay, my friends. We will take up that topic with the third video in this series. Thank you very much for being here. God bless. Namaste.